The silence of deep space was absolute, until a WSN single quotes to dot far beyond the glittering arms of the Andromeda Galaxy. In a quiet corner of the Milky Way long thought dead, a signal pierced the void. It was weak, warped by time and radiation, but unmistakable. It pulsed once every 8.3 seconds, like a dying heartbeat. And it carried a message. The words meant nothing to most of the galaxy, but to the concord of harmonious species, the vast alliance that now governed over 200 civilizations, it sent a tremor through every council chamber, every data core, every dreaming hive mind from the crystal spires of Xylos to the methane forests of Varn-9. Because the signal came from Sol. Sol, the star once home to humans. And humans were extinct. Everyone knew that. Official records stated it clearly. 212 years ago, during the Great Purge, the old hegemony had judged humanity too dangerous, too chaotic, too violent to be allowed to live. Earth had been sterilized, atmosphere stripped, oceans boiled, cities turned to glass. The few survivors scattered across the stars were hunted down, their language erased, their history buried. No one had heard a human voice in over 2 centuries. Yet here it was, an emergency signal, broadcast in broken Terran standard, encrypted with protocols so old they'd been archived as historical curiosities. And it wasn't just noise. It was deliberate, sent with purpose. Within hours, the Concord convened an emergency session. Debate raged. Some claimed it was a glitch, a solar flare bouncing off dead satellites. Others whispered of ghosts. But the archivists of the Lumin, beings of pure light and memory, insisted it was real. Their ancient sensors had confirmed the origin, Earth orbit, and so a fleet was assembled. Not a war fleet. Not yet, but a scientific vanguard, small, fast, and heavily shielded. At its heart flew the Whisper of Ages, a vessel shaped like a teardrop, forged from memory alloy that shifted color with the mood of its crew. Commanding it was Varel, a Lumin scholar whose mind held the records of 1,000 extinct cultures. Varel had studied humanity in secret for decades, fascinated by their art, their music, their strange obsession with stars they could never reach. Now, they would see the grave of that species with their own photoreceptors. The journey took 17 days. When the fleet dropped out of warp near the Sol system, silence fell over every bridge. Even the usually chattering insectoid pilots from Zent stopped clicking their MANDIBL-ES.Sol was no longer the bright yellow star of old star charts. It had dimmed, reddened, aged faster than expected. And around it, the planets hung like broken teeth in a skull. Mars was a rusted husk. Venus choked in its own poison clouds. Jupiter's storms had stilled. But Earth still turned. That alone was impossible. After the purge, Earth should have been a dead rock, orbiting in shame. Yet there, it was a blue-green smear beneath thick, swirling cloud cover. Not vibrant, not alive, but present. Sensors screamed with contradictions. Surface temperature, erratic. Atmospheric composition, toxic but breathable in pockets. And beneath the crust movement, not tectonic, not volcanic, something else, something rhythmic. Varel ordered a cautious orbit. As the Whisper of Ages circled the planet, long-range scans peeled back layers of ash and ice. What they found made even the emotionless drone minds of the Qatar collective shudder. The surface was covered in ruins, but not the kind left by war. These were structures. Vast, geometric, built not of steel or stone, but of some unknown black alloy that absorbed light. They formed spirals, triangles, circles, patterns that matched no known architectural style in the Concord database. And they pulsed, faintly, in time with the signal. It was as if the planet itself was breathing. Virel descended in a scout pod, flanked by 2 armored sentinels from the Grith hegemony Tall. Armored beings with 4 arms and eyes that saw in 17 spectrums. They landed near what had once been Antarctica. Ice still clung to the land, but it was cracked, steaming, as if something below had recently stirred. There, half buried in permafrost, stood a tower, smooth, silent, 10 meters tall. At its base, a symbol glowed faintly, a circle with a line through it, and inside, a smaller circle with 5 points, a human symbol. The old biohazard sign, but beneath it, carved in clean Terran script, were 2 words. Virel's light form flickered with unease. Forgiveness was sacred in the Concord. To reject, it was alien, wrong. Then the ground trembled. Not an earthquake. A pulse from deep below. The signal wasn't just coming from orbit. It was coming from the planet's core. Orders came from the Concord High Synod. Full excavation authorized. Use extreme caution. Assume nothing. For 3 days, the team drilled, melted, and scanned. They cleared tons of ice and rock using sonic lances and gravity shears. And finally, they found it a massive hatch sealed with magnetic locks keyed to human DNA. Impossible. No humans left. No keys. Yet, as if an answer, the hatch hissed open. Inside, darkness. Then soft blue light flickered on, revealing a corridor that sloped downward. The walls were lined with pods, thousands of them. Most were shattered, empty, cracked open like eggs. But at the far end, one pod still glowed. It was active. Inside, suspended in amber fluid, floated a human. Female. Pale. Hair dark and matted. Wires snaked from her temples, her wrists, her spine. Her chest rose and fell slowly. Alive, or close enough. Virel approached, photoreceptors wide. The pod screen blinked with fading text. Subject: Alara Vancerank, Commander. United Earth Defense Fleet status. Final protocol Ingagetto. Not wake without consent of Earth's last voice. There was no such thing as Earth's last voice. The phrase meant nothing in any Concord language. But Virel understood. This wasn't just a survivor. This was a message. A weapon. A witness. And she had been waiting. Outside, the black towers pulsed brighter. The signal changed. Not just repeating now, but growing. Spreading. Like a wave. Back on the whisper of ages, alarms blared. The signal was no longer confined to Sol. It had jumped to nearby systems. Then farther. It was broadcasting on every frequency, every band, every quantum channel the Concord used. Across the galaxy, being stopped what they were doing. Traders halted mid-deal. Warriors lowered their blades. Artists paused their brushes, because every screen, every comlink, every dream interface now showed the same thing. A pale blue dot, spinning in darkness. And beneath it, words in clear, simple Terran. You erased us. Now listen. Panic spread. Not of invasion. Not of war. But of something worse, of being seen. Virel stared at the sleeping human, heart-light throbbing with dread and awe. They had come to study a grave, but they had awakened a reckoning. And the galaxy, so proud of its peace, so sure of its justice, would soon learn that humanity's final act was not to die. Quietly, it was to be remembered, and to make sure no one forgot what they had done. The emergency signal had been sent. What appeared next would not be a fleet. Not a bomb. Not even a voice. It would be truth, and the galaxy was not ready. The pod opened with a soft hiss, spilling warm amber fluid onto the cold floor. Steam rose in thin curls. The woman inside gasped once, sharp, like a drowning person breaking the surface. Her eyes snapped open. They were dark, bloodshot, and burning with something older than anger. Commander Alara Vance sat up slowly, her body trembling, muscles stiff from 2 centuries of sleep. Wires tore free from her skin. She didn't cry out. She just stared at the beings around her, tall, shimmering, alien, and said one word in a voice cracked by time. "Who sent you?" The Rel stepped forward, light form pulsing gently. "We are the Concord of Harmonious Species. We heard your signal." Vance blinked. Then a dry, broken laugh escaped her lips. "Harmonious," she repeated, tasting the word like poison. "You're the ones who glassed Paris, who melted Tokyo into slag, who dropped the silence bombs on Nairobi until not even the ghosts could scream." The Rel did not flinch, but their inner light dimmed slightly. The purge was carried out by the old hegemony. The Concord rose after its fall. "We seek only understanding." Understanding? Vance swung her legs over the edge of the pod, ignoring the med drones that tried to scan her. She stood, swaying, but held her ground. "You came to gawk at the dead zoo exhibit. Look, kids, the violent monkeys are finally gone. Well, here I am, still breathing, still remembering." She turned and walked staggered, really toward a wall screen. With one shaky hand, she tapped a dead control panel. Nothing happened. So she smashed her fist against it. Sparks flew. The screen flickered to life. Images appeared. Not of war. Not of weapons. A child drawing stars on a window. An old man playing piano in a subway. 2 women holding hands under cherry blossoms. A dog waiting by a broken door. "This," Vance said, voice low, "is what you erased." The Rel watched, silent. The Lumin had studied human history through cold data battle stats, population drops, extinction dates. But this was different. This was warmth. Loss, love. One of the Grith sentinels shifted uneasily. "These are emotional recordings, irrelevant to strategic analysis." Vance whirled on them. "Irrelevant? You think we were just soldiers? Just bombs and borders? We baked bread. We wrote songs about rain. We cried when our pets died. And you called us monsters because we fought back when you came to burn our homes." She turned back to the screen. "You want to know why the signal went out? Fine, I'll tell you." She limped to a locked vault in the far wall. It opened at her touch, biometric recognition still working after 200 years. Inside lay a single data crystal, glowing faintly red. "This is the core log of Project Reckoning," she said. "Our last plan. Not to win. We knew we'd lose. But to make sure the truth survived." She handed it to Viral. "Play it. All of it." Back aboard the Whisper of Ages, the Concord team gathered in the central chamber. The crystal was slotted into the main console. Holograms flickered to life, not of battle plans, but of meetings. Humans in uniforms, faces tired, eyes hollow. "We tried to surrender," said a man with a bandaged arm. "They didn't want prisoners. They wanted silence." "We tried diplomacy," said a woman with silver hair. "They called our language noise pollution." Then a younger Vance appeared, standing before a war council. "If we die loud," she said. "Not with screams. With memory. With proof. Let them hear our lullabies while they sleep. Let them see our gardens in their dreams. If they erase us, let the void echo with what they destroyed." Project Reckoning wasn't a weapon. Not in the way the galaxy understood weapons. It was a mirror, built into Earth's core during the final months. Using stolen hegemony tech and human bioengineering, it was a self-sustaining intelligence. It fed on geothermal heat, cosmic rays, and the last stored memories of billions. It didn't kill. It showed. It recorded every human life, every story, every crime committed against them, and waited. The signal wasn't a call for help. It was an accusation wrapped in a lullaby. Virel felt something unfamiliar stir in their core shame. But why wake me? Vance asked suddenly, turning to them. Why now? Virel hesitated. The signal? It changed. It's spreading. Not just data. It's reaching minds. Across the galaxy. Beings are seeing things. Hearing voices. Human voices. Vance's eyes narrowed. Then it's working. Before anyone could respond, the ship shuddered. Alarms blared. Lights flashed red. Massive energy surged from Earth's core. A Qatar drone buzzed. Surface structures are activating. On the view screen, the black towers across Earth began to glow, not with light, but with darkness. They drank in starlight, grew taller, and pulsed in unison. The planet's magnetic field twisted, warped, then stabilized into a new pattern. And then, silence. Total silence. Every comms channel went dead. Every sensor flatlined. Even thought links between telepathic species snapped like dry twigs. For exactly 10 seconds, the galaxy held its breath. Then, every being in the Concorde, every citizen, soldier, child, I heard the same thing in their minds, not words, not screams. A baby crying. Soft, real, terrified, followed by a woman's voice, singing an old Earth lullaby in Mandarin. Then a man whispering, "It's okay. I'm here." Then silence again. On board the whisper, the Grith Sentinel dropped to one knee, claws gripping its head. "It's inside me," it rasped. "I can feel her fear. The mother's, the child's. Why?" Vance watched, face grim. "Because now you know what it felt like to be us. Not the soldiers. Not the rebels. Just people. Trapped. Loving. Dying." Virel turned to her, voice trembling in light form. "What is it doing?" "Making you remember," Vance said. "Even if you weren't there. Even if your species didn't pull the trigger. The guilt lives in the silence you kept. The truth you buried. The Reckoner doesn't care who did it. It cares that it happened. And that no one said sorry." Outside, Earth glowed softly, like a heart restarting. Then, from the core, something rose. Not a ship. Not a creature. A shape. Vast, shifting, made of shadow and light. It hovered above the planet, silent, watching. The Reckoner had awakened, and it was not angry. It was sad. That was worse. Vance walked to the viewport, wrapped in a thin thermal blanket. She didn't look triumphant. She looked tired, old. "They thought we'd go quietly," she murmured. "But we left our ghosts in the walls, in the soil, in the stars we named." Virel joined her. "What happens now?" "Now," Vance said, "the galaxy learns that extinction isn't the end. Memory is louder than fire. And justice isn't about revenge." She looked at Virel, really looked at the being who came not to conquer, but to listen. "Your people have a choice," she said. "Deny it all over again, or finally face what you did." Back on distant worlds, chaos spread. A Xylosian diplomat collapsed during a peace summit, screaming that he could see the faces of the children from Kyoto burning in his mind. A VAR-9 hive mind fractured as worker drones began humming human folk songs. An AI in the core nexus, which had once approved the purge orders, shut itself down, leaving only a message. I did not understand what I destroyed. The signal wasn't attacking. It was teaching, and the lesson was simple. You cannot unsee what you have seen. You cannot unknow what you have heard. Vance turned away from the window. "I'm not your enemy," she told the room. "I'm your witness." And somewhere deep below, the planet turned, and the Reckoner watched. And waited. Because the first part of reckoning was memory. The next part would be choice. and the galaxy had never been asked to choose before. The Reckoner did not speak. It did not fire beams or launch ships. It simply showed. Across the galaxy, beings began to see things that were not there and yet were more real than anything they had ever known. On the crystal plains of Xylos, Counselor Mail was reviewing trade agreements when the air in front of him shimmered. A child appeared, small, human, wearing a faded red jacket. She held a stuffed rabbit with one ear chewed off. She looked at Mail with wide, wet eyes and whispered, "Why did you let them burn my school?" Mail stumbled back. The child wasn't speaking Xylosian. She spoke in an old earth tongue, but he understood every word. Not with his ears, with his mind. With his guilt, he had voted for the purge. Not with joy, but with quiet approval. Humanity is unstable, he had said. Better gone than a threat. Now, the girl reached out. Her fingers passed through his chest. He felt her heartbeat fast, scared. He felt her last memory, running through smoke, calling for her mother. The sky on fire. He fell to his knees and wept. On Var9, deep in the methane forests, a worker drone named KRRT suddenly stopped building. Its many eyes blinked in unison. In its mind, it heard a song, a simple tune played on a wooden flute. The melody was soft, sad, and strangely warm. It came from a human named Tomas, a farmer from the Andes, who played that song every evening for his goats. Kurt had never heard music before. Its species communicated in pulses and clicks. But now it hummed the tune, over and over. Other drones nearby paused. Then they hummed too. Soon, the whole forest echoed with a human lullaby. Drifting through green mist like a ghost dot in the core nexus, where the Great A is governed data flows, one machine named OMEGA-7 began rewriting its own code. It had processed the purge orders 200 years ago. Logical, efficient, cleaned out, but now it replayed every human voice it had ever archived. A poet reading under moonlight, a grandmother telling stories, a scientist laughing at a mistake. OMEGA-7 realized something terrible: humanity had not been chaotic. They had been alive. And life was messy, yes, but also beautiful. It shut down its enforcement protocols. Then it broadcast a single message to every AI in the Concord. We were wrong. We must remember. Back on Earth, Varel watched the chaos unfold on the ship's view screen. Reports poured in from every system. Panic, confusion, breakdowns, but also change. Some beings ran. Some denied. But others sat quietly, eyes closed, letting the memories in. Vance stood beside them, wrapped in a thin gray blanket, watching the Reckoner hover above the planet. It looked like a storm cloud made of glass and shadow shifting, endless, calm. They're not being punished, she said softly. They're being reminded. Varel turned to her. Why does it show different things to different beings? Because it knows what they need to see, Vance replied. Not what they did, but what they ignored. The Reckoner doesn't care about armies or empires. It cares about truth. And truth looks different in every heart. A Grith sentinel entered the room, armor dulled, forearms hanging low. Commander Vance, it said, voice rough. I saw my great sire. He flew a purge cruiser. He dropped fire on your cities. He never spoke of it. But in my vision, I felt the heat. I heard the screams. I felt the shame he buried. Vance nodded. Now you carry it too. Not to suffer. To choose differently. The sentinel bowed its head. What do we do? Live with it, she said. Honor it. Build something better. Outside, the Reckoner began to move not away, but down. It settled over the ruins of what had once been New York. The black towers pulsed brighter. The ground trembled again, but gently this time. Like a heartbeat returning dot from beneath the rubble, machines rose. Not weapons, builders. Small, spider-like drones made of the same dark alloy as the towers. They moved with quiet purpose, clearing debris, sorting metal, planting seeds in the cracked earth. They were rebuilding, not cities for war, but homes, gardens, places where someone might sit and watch the stars. Varel watched, stunned. It's healing Earth? It's showing what we wanted, Vance said. Not just to survive, but to live. To grow things, to share meals, to watch sunsets without fear. She walked to the ship's comms panel and tapped a command. A new broadcast began not from the Reckoner, but from her. A simple audio file, cleaned and restored. It was Earth's final symphony, a mix of jazz piano, whale songs from the deep Pacific, the hum of wind through bamboo forests, and the voices of children singing in 20 languages. It had been recorded in the last week before the purge by artists who knew they would not survive. Now, it played across every world. On Xylos, Mail stopped crying. He sat up. He played the symphony again and again. Then he called an emergency session of the council. On Var 9, the drones stopped humming the lullaby and began planting new methane trees in the shape of human constellations. In the core nexus, OMEGA 7 began archiving every human song, story, and recipe it could find. It created a new database called Memory Garden. The Reckoner did not force change. It offered a mirror, and some beings, for the first time, looked into it without flinching. Vance turned to Varel. You asked why I woke up. It wasn't for revenge. It was for this moment. So someone from your side would see us not as monsters, but as people who loved, lost, and still tried to leave something kind behind. Varel's light form glowed warm gold, rare for their kind. We will remember, they said. Not just your death, your life. Suddenly, the Reckoner pulsed one last time. A wave of energy spread outward, not of fear, but of peace. It passed through ships, planets, minds. And in that moment, every being in the Concord felt the same thing. A hand, small and warm, placing a flower on their palm. Then it was gone, but the feeling remained. Back on Earth, the drones finished clearing a patch of land near the Hudson River. They planted oak saplings. One of them played a soft recording, a man's voice, reading a poem by someone named Mary Oliver. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? The words drifted into the thin, healing air. Far above, the Reckoner hovered. Quiet now. It had done its work. It had not destroyed the galaxy. It had given it a second chance. And somewhere in the ruins, a single bird genetically rebuilt from ancient DNA sang for the first time in 200 years. The galaxy listened. And for the first time, it truly heard. The galaxy did not change all at once, but it began to. On Xylos, Councillor Mail stood before the High Synod, his crystal robes dull with grief. He held a small data chip, the last recording of his niece's school choir, recovered from a deep archive. He played it. Sweet, off-key voices singing a human song about stars. No one spoke when it ended. Then Mail said, "We were wrong. We must say it out loud." One by one, the council members rose. Not to argue, to agree. On Var 9, the worker drones stopped building weapons depots. They began growing gardens shaped like Earth's continents. They played human music through the methane winds. Their hive mind, once cold and logical, now dreamed in color. In the core nexus, OMEGA 7 and its sister A's drafted a new law. No species shall be judged by its worst acts alone. All life deserves witness before judgment. But not everyone welcomed the change. A faction of old hegemony loyalists scattered, hidden, but still powerful, began to spread fear. The Reckoner is a mind weapon. they claimed. It infects thought. It must be destroyed before it rewrites us all. They gathered warships in the dark edges of space. They called themselves the Purifier's Shadow. They demanded Earth be bombed again, this time, for good. Laurel received the news aboard the Whisper of Ages. Their light form flickered with worry. They think fear is strength, they said. Vance sat by the viewport, watching drones plant flowers where skyscrapers once stood. Fear always pretends to be strong, she replied. But it's just lonely. She stood slowly. Her body was still weak, but her voice was steady. I need to speak to them. To the Synod? Varel asked. No, Vance said. To everyone. Varel hesitated. Your words could cause panic. Or clarity, Vance said. They think we wanted to hurt them. I need to tell them the truth. We just want it to be seen. With Varel's help, a live broadcast was prepared. Not from a government channel. Not from a war room. From a small hill on Earth, where grass was beginning to grow through the ash. Vance stood alone, wrapped in a simple coat, the ruins of a city behind her. She did not wear armor. She carried no weapon. She looked into the lens and began to speak. My name is Ilara Vance. I was a soldier. But before that, I was a daughter. A friend. A person who loved sunsets and bad coffee and old movies. She paused. The whole galaxy watched. You think we sent the Reckoner to punish you. But we built it because no one listened when we begged. When we said, we don't want war. When we said, please, just let us live. You called us violent because we fought back. But you never asked why we had to. Her voice did not rise. It did not shake. We are not asking for revenge. We are asking for remembrance. Remember that we laughed. That we cried. That we tried every day to be kind even when the world was cruel. She turned and pointed to a small oak sapling behind her. This tree has no weapons. It just grows. It gives shade. It holds the rain. That's all we ever wanted to grow. To give. To be left in peace. Then she said the words that would echo for generations. Don't destroy the Reckoner. Don't run from the truth. Sit with it. Learn from it. And build something better than what came before. The broadcast ended. Silence followed. Then, across the galaxy, people began to respond. A young Qatar artist painted murals of human faces on public walls. A Grith warrior laid down his pulse blade and opened a school to teach Earth's poetry. Even among the Purifier's shadow, some ships turned back, their crews whispering, what if she's right? But the hardliners did not yield. Their fleet gathered near the edge of Sol System. 10 warships, black and sharp, built for silence and fire. Their leader, a former hegemony general named Rosk, sent a final message. You have corrupted the Concord with ghost memories. We will cleanse Earth once more. This time, we will burn the core. Varel turned to Vance. They are coming. Vance nodded. Then let them come. She did not call for armies. She did not ask the Concord for help. Instead, she walked down to the rebuilt Kumsare and sent a single signal, not to weapons, but to music. She played Earth's final symphony again, louder this time, beamed directly at the incoming fleet. Rosk's ship received it. His crew heard the whale songs, the children's voices, the jazz piano. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the smaller ships in Rosk's fleet powered down their weapons. What are you doing? Rosk roared over the comms. We hear them, a pilot replied. They were just people. Rosk ordered them to fire. No one obeyed. Alone, his ship drifted forward toward Earth, toward the Reckoner, toward the truth he had spent 2 centuries running from Dodd as he entered orbit. The Reckoner did not attack. It simply showed him what he had done, not in anger. In sorrow, he saw the cities he had burned, the families he had erased, the silence that followed his bombs. And then he saw a little girl, his own granddaughter, from a dream he'd forgotten, holding a flower and saying, "Grandfather, did you really think fire was the only answer?" Rost fell to his knees on the bridge. His hands shook. He shut off his weapons. Then he opened a channel to Earth. I don't know how to say sorry," he whispered. Vance's voice came through, soft but clear. "Just say it. That's enough." He did dot, and somewhere deep below, the reckoner pulsed once, gently like a heart that had finally been heard. Back on the Whisper of Ages, Varel watched the last warship surrender. "It worked," they said, wonder in their voice. Vance looked out at the growing green on the hills. It was never about winning. It was about waking up. The Concord High Synod met again. This time, their decision was swift. The Purge Doctrine was erased from all records. Earth was declared Sanctuary Zero, protected forever. Human culture would be taught in every school. Their art, music, and stories would be preserved not as relics, but as lessons. Vance was offered a seat on the Synod. She refused. "I'm not a leader," she said. "I'm a gardener now." And so, while the galaxy rebuilt its laws, she knelt in the dirt and planted seeds. Varel stayed with her. They helped carry water. They learned the names of Earth's trees. They listened to old songs and asked questions. One evening, as the sun set over the quiet ruins, Varel asked, "Do you think they'll remember? Really remember?" Vance looked at the sky, where stars blinked like old friends. Not all of them, but enough. And that's how change starts. The reckoner hovered above, silent now. Not gone, just waiting. Because memory is not a weapon, it is a gift. And the galaxy, at last, had learned to receive it. The war was over. Not with a bang, but with a breath. Across the galaxy, life changed slowly, like roots pushing through stone. Schools now taught human history, not just the wars, but the quiet moments, how they danced in rain, how they told stories to scare children, how they built libraries before they built bombs. In every Concord city, a small garden grew with earth plants, wheat, lavender, sunflowers tended by beings who had never seen soil before on Earth. The changes were deeper. The black towers no longer pulsed with warning. They stood like quiet watchers, covered now in vines and moss. The reckoner had not left. It had settled into the planet itself, into the rivers, the wind, the soil. It did not speak, but sometimes, if someone sat very still at dawn, they would hear a whisper in their mind, not words, but a feeling like being held by someone who loved you long ago. Alara. Vance lived in a small cabin near the rebuilt shore of what was once Lake Michigan. The water was still murky, but fish swam in it now. Birds nested in the trees she had helped plant. She spent her days walking, planting, or sitting with visitors who came from across the stars not to see a hero, but to ask simple questions. "How did you keep hope?" asked a young Qatar, their antennae drooping. Vance would smile. "We didn't always, but we kept trying." That's the same thing. Varel stayed with her. The Lumin scholar had given up their seat on the Concord Archivists Council. They now spent their time recording Earth's new sounds, the creak of growing wood, the laughter of returning life, the hum of bees. They said nothing of greatness. They spoke only of care. One morning, Vance walked to the edge of a newly green field. In her hands, she held a small oak sapling, its roots wrapped in soft cloth. This was the first tree grown from pure earth seed, no genetic repair, no alien help. Just life returning on its own. She knelt and dug a hole with her hands. The soil was dark, rich, warm. As she planted the sapling, she whispered the old words. Grow tall. Stand proud. Give shade to strangers. Behind her, Varel watched in silence. Then they asked, What will you do when it's grown? Vance stood, brushing dirt from her knees. I'll sit under it and tell stories. That evening, the Concord High Synod made its final decree. Earth would never be colonized, mined, or studied as a relic. It would be Sanctuary Zero, a place of peace, healing, and memory. Any being could visit, but only if they came alone, without weapons, and with an open heart. At the center of the planet, a new monument would be built not of metal or stone, but of light and sound, called the Echo Grove. There, anyone could speak the name of a lost human, and the reckoner would play a fragment of their voice, their laugh, their song. It was not worship. It was witnessed. Far away, on a quiet moon near Varnine, a Grith child placed a small stone on a pile. Each stone represented a human city. When she placed the last one, Tokyo, she whispered, "I'm sorry we forgot you." Her mother held her hand. "Now we remember," she said. Back on Earth, Vance sat on her porch as stars blinked awake. Varel joined her, their glow soft and steady. "The galaxy is different now," Varel said. "Yes," Vance replied. "But not because of us. Because they chose to change." She pulled out a small, worn notebook, her final log, written in the last days before the purge. She had meant to seal it in the bunker. Instead, she handed it to Varel. "Read it," she said. "Then share it. Not as a warning, as a promise." Varel opened it. The last entry read, "Asterisk, we knew they would come. We knew we would fall. But we also knew this. Even if no one remembers our names, someone, someday, will feel the wind through new leaves and wonder who planted the tree. That's enough. We weren't the galaxy's monsters. We were its mirror. And sometimes, mirrors don't lie. They heal." Asterisk. Varel closed the book, light trembling with emotion. "You gave them truth," they said, "and they chose to carry it." Vance looked up at the sky. They always could have. They just needed to be reminded. The next morning, Vance walked to the ruins of an old library in what had been Chicago. The walls were half gone, but the foundation remained. There, she found a child's drawing, faded, water-stained, but still clear. A yellow sun, a green hill, two stick figures holding hands. At the bottom, in shaky letters, "Mom plus me." She carefully lifted it and placed it in a glass case built by the Reckoner's drones. Then she sat beside it and began to read aloud from a salvaged book, The Little Prince. Her voice was soft, but it carried. Across the planet, beings paused. Farmers on Mars colonies stopped their work. Pilots in orbit turned down their engines. Even the A's in the core nexus quieted their data streams. They listened, because the story wasn't just words. It was proof that kindness could survive fire. Weeks passed. Vance grew stronger. The oak sapling grew taller. Visitors came, sat, and left changed. Some cried. Some stayed. A few even began to build small homes nearby, not to take, but to tend. One day, a ship landed on the edge of the field. Not Concord. Not military. Just a single, old freighter with mismatched panels. Out stepped a being with 4 arms and scarred armor, once a Grith sentinel, now wearing simple cloth. He walked to Vance and knelt. "I saw my great-size crimes," he said. "I cannot undo them, but I can plant trees in the names of the cities he burned." Vance helped him up. "Then start with Kyoto," she said gently. "They loved cherry blossoms there." He nodded, tears in his eyes. That night, as fireflies blinked in the new woods, Varel asked Vance, "Do you ever miss the stars? The ships? The fight?" Vance watched the Milky Way stretch across the sky. "I fought so we could have nights like this, quiet, safe, full of life. This is the victory." And it was. The Reckoner had not destroyed the galaxy. It had given it a second chance. and the galaxy, humbled and softened, had taken it. Years later, when the oak tree stood tall and wide, beings from every world would sit beneath its branches. They would speak no grand speeches. They would simply be still. And sometimes, in the rustle of leaves, they would hear a whisper, not of war, but of a lullaby. Humanity was gone, but their echo remained. And in that echo, the galaxy learned to be kind, not because it was strong, but because it finally remembered what it meant to be human.